I remember one time, after about 17 or 18 shows, I really wanted to get out of the show. I thought the show was not doing what...
By the time Lorne Greene died in 1987, his voice had already become part of America's memory. The sound of war, family, and faith. But few knew how much that voice had cost him. After just 16 episodes of Bonanza, Greene nearly quit. The show was dying, and he told producer Ben Cartwright was too cold, too fake. They rewrote it. 2 years later, it became one of the biggest hits on television. But success came with fractures. On screen, he was the perfect father. Off screen, he was a man worn down by exhaustion, grief, and doubt, trapped in the image of his own creation. He gave his voice to a nation, but in the end, it left him silent. So why did the man who embodied strength feel so powerless? What was really happening behind the scenes of Bonanza? How did the voice that guided millions lose its own? Lorne Greene's rise began not from opportunity, but from necessity. Born in 1915 in Ottawa to Jewish immigrants who had fled persecution in Russia, his earliest memories were of cold, hunger, and fear. The winters were long, the walls of their small apartment thin, and the air often thick with the smell of shoe glue from his father's repair shop. His mother, Dora, worked long hours sewing, saving every coin she could. It was she who taught him to read, using torn newspapers as his first textbooks. Words became his escape, and later his weapon. When the family's shop burned down in 1922, everything vanished in one night. Their income, their home, their stability. The Greenes moved into a crowded basement with other displaced families, and Lorne learned early what it meant to have no control over one's life. But from that loss came a kind of steel. If he couldn't own land or wealth, he decided, he would own his voice. That conviction, fragile at first, became the foundation of everything he would later build. As a teenager, Greene was obsessed with sound. He scavenged old radios from dumps, taking them apart, chasing the mystery of human voices carried through static. Late at night, by the dim light of a candle, he read news stories aloud to no one, practicing how to make words carry weight. It wasn't performance, it was discipline. Rhythm, a way to impose order on chaos. When offered a secure position at a bank after school, he turned it down. Instead, he joined the Ottawa Little Theatre, a decision that broke his father's heart but gave him a sense of purpose. He adopted the name Lorne, drawn from a Scottish river, as if a new name could flow him toward a new destiny. His first roles were small and forgettable, but in those fleeting moments under the stage lights, he discovered the power of presence, that his voice could move people. In 1939, as Canada entered World War II, Greene joined the newly formed Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. His deep, resonant tones soon became inseparable from the nation's wartime broadcasts. Every night, he read reports of bombings, battles, and lives lost, steady and solemn, a voice of calm amid chaos. The public began to call him the Voice of Doom. The name was ironic, but affectionate. It meant trust. In the darkest hours, his was the sound that held a country together. After the war ended, Greene faced a quieter crisis, whether to remain the disembodied voice of a nation or to reclaim something more human. He left the CBC to found a radio school in Toronto, teaching the art of truth in speech, how to let words breathe. Some of his students, like Leslie Nielsen, would later become legends. But the school itself struggled and eventually collapsed. Greene didn't complain. He simply started over. By the early 1950s, he was 37 and broke. Too old, it seemed, to start a new career, yet too proud to quit. So he went to Hollywood. He had no connections, no agent, and a voice that casting directors said was too heavy. He took whatever roles came his way: soldiers, judges, villains. It wasn't fame, it was endurance. Then, in 1959, came Bonanza. As Ben Cartwright, Greene's quiet gravitas finally found its home. He became the father America wished it had: principled, steady, unflinching. To millions, his deep voice was no longer the voice of doom, but the sound of moral certainty. He embodied strength without cruelty, power without ego. But even the strongest images eventually meet time's erosion. And for Lorne Greene, the man who had once given others a sense of stability, the question would soon turn inward. What happens when the voice of authority begins to fade into silence? In the early years of Bonanza, it felt as if everything Lorne Greene had endured, the cold winters of Ottawa, the failed ventures, the years of obscurity, had finally led to this moment. The show was a phenomenon, one of the first color television series to beam warmth and morality into millions of American homes each week. Greene's deep voice and calm authority became fixtures of family life. Letters arrived by the thousands, from children who wished Ben Cartwright were their father, from men who said he reminded them of who they wanted to be. To the public, he was a beacon of virtue, firm but gentle, moral yet merciful. But behind the carefully lit sets of the Ponderosa Ranch, that image began to cast long shadows. Greene was in his late 40s, and the success that should have freed him was beginning to trap him. Hollywood adored him for his reliability, and confined him to it. Directors wanted Ben Cartwright, not Lorne Greene. Scripts arrived that echoed the same lines of fatherly wisdom, week after week. For an actor who had once found depth in the silences of radio and the tension of theater, being reduced to an emblem of decency felt like a quiet kind of exile. The work itself was punishing. 10 months of filming each year, endless days under the Nevada sun, lines rewritten until meaning blurred. He carried not only the show's moral center, but also its emotional burden, the unspoken duty to keep Bonanza clean, stable, and upright. In private moments, he admitted he wanted more, episodes that explored moral ambiguity, justice with consequence, humanity with flaw. But the network wanted comfort, not complexity. It was then that the first warning signs appeared. Subtle, almost invisible at first. Small disagreements on set began to harden into fractures. Pernell Roberts, who played Adam, demanded realism and creative risk. Greene insisted on discipline and order. Their debates grew heated, sometimes spilling beyond the studio lot. Meanwhile, Michael Landon, the youngest, began pushing for his own creative control, a shift Greene, proud yet wary, struggled to navigate. The family America adored was becoming a battleground of ideals. Outside the studio, his personal life offered little refuge. His first marriage had ended quietly, leaving him guarded. Though he remarried, the weight of fame and the expectations of sainthood left little room for vulnerability. To fans, he was the unwavering patriarch. To those close to him, he was often elsewhere, present in body, absent in spirit. By the mid-1960s, the signs of fatigue were undeniable. Greene began to sense that the image he had built, this strong, moral, unbreakable man, was starting to own him. The same voice that once carried Canada through war was now bound to lines written by others. And in the quiet moments between takes, he began to wonder whether integrity could become its own kind of prison. He didn't yet know it, but the role that made him immortal would also become the one that slowly erased the man behind the voice. The warning was already there, hidden in every perfect line, every rehearsed gesture, every smile that lasted just a moment too long. And then everything changed. By the late 1960s, Bonanza still ruled the airwaves, but for Lorne Greene, the triumph had begun to ring hollow. Week after week, he stood beneath the same studio lights, speaking words that no longer carried weight. The moral world of Ben Cartwright, clear, certain, unbending, felt increasingly out of place in a decade cracking open with protest and pain. America was changing. Streets filled with civil rights marches, anti-war rallies, and youth movements that questioned everything Bonanza stood for. Greene wanted the show to evolve, to face these new storms honestly. He pushed for stories about justice, prejudice, and the price of violence. Sometimes he won small victories. Most times the network smoothed the edges. Television, they said, was for comfort, not confrontation. And so the man once called the voice of doom found himself delivering words emptied of consequence, his authority reduced to a script cue. The erosion spread quietly into his private life. In 1964, gossip columns whispered of an affair on set. Nothing explosive by Hollywood standards, but enough to pierce the armor of his public virtue. Greene neither confirmed nor denied it. Instead, he retreated inward, writing an episode about forgiveness, as if trying to confess through fiction what he could never admit aloud. The irony was cruel. The man who embodied righteousness was learning painfully that righteousness has its limits. Then came the losses that no script could repair. Pernell Roberts walked away, disgusted by the show's stagnation. Dan Blocker, his on-screen son and off-screen friend, died suddenly in 1972. Greene later said that after Blocker's death, the soul went out of the show. Ratings collapsed soon after. The network canceled Bonanza without warning or farewell. 14 years of his life vanished overnight. the father of television suddenly orphaned. In the aftermath, Greene tried to reinvent himself. He sought darker, more human stories, like The Harness, where he played a man broken by control and silence. Critics called it his most honest work. Perhaps they were right. The performance carried the weight of a man who knew too well what it meant to be trapped inside an image. Later came Battlestar Galactica, where he once again led the Lost, this time through space. It was success reborn, but also repetition. Even among the stars, he could not escape the archetype. Wherever he went, the world still wanted Pa Cartwright. So he turned to purpose. He gave away much of what he earned, lending his voice to causes that couldn't speak for themselves: children scarred by war, forests threatened by greed, species fading into silence. Through documentaries like Last of the Wild and New Wilderness, he became a new kind of patriarch, not of men, but of the planet itself. His voice, once the sound of war, then of home, now belonged to nature. And yet, beneath the noble work, there remained an ache he rarely named. It wasn't a regret, it was emptiness, the quiet knowledge that his greatest creation had consumed the man behind it. Fame had given him a voice heard across continents, but at the cost of the one that spoke only for himself. By the 1980s, he was cherished but misunderstood, the embodiment of a bygone ideal in a world that had moved on. Strangers still wrote to Pa, telling him how his wisdom had shaped their childhoods. He answered many, grateful yet haunted. His friends noticed how often he stayed late in the studio, recording narration after narration, as if afraid that silence might erase him completely. The man who had given voice to nations and generations slipped away without one last word. And perhaps that was fitting. For all his life, Lorne Greene had spoken for others: soldiers, sons, the lost, and the hopeful. But when the lights dimmed and the sound faded, what remained was something purer, almost sacred, the echo of a man who had carried decency through a century that too often forgot it. His was not a fall, but a soft descent from myth back into humanity. And in that silence, his true voice, calm, steady, unguarded, finally came home. After Lorne Greene's death in 1987, the tributes came quietly but sincerely. Colleagues spoke of professionalism, friends spoke of warmth, and audiences remembered the voice. There were no public controversies to settle, no reputation to rebuild. Yet what lingered was a sense of unfinished conversation, a man who had spent his entire life speaking for others, but had rarely spoken for himself. In the years that followed, his legacy evolved beyond the roles that made him famous. Bonanza remained a staple of syndication, reaching new generations who had never known the 1960s but still found comfort in its simplicity. Viewers continued to associate Greene with moral clarity and gentle strength, but those who had studied his life saw something more layered, a man shaped by hardship, haunted by imperfection, and sustained by purpose. Greene's later work in environmental education offered a quiet resolution to his lifelong tension between authority and empathy. Through Lorne Greene's New Wilderness, his voice took on a new tone, not commanding, but contemplative. He no longer told audiences what was right. He invited them to observe, to care, to understand. The same cadence that had once delivered wartime losses now carried stories of endangered species and fragile ecosystems. It was a fitting transformation, from the voice of doom to the voice of life. Privately, Greene's family described him as gentle but distant, a man devoted to order, perhaps too much so. His second marriage to Nancy Deal brought him companionship, though much of their life was spent around his work. He left behind 2 children from his first marriage, both of whom spoke of him with admiration tinged by absence. Fame had given the world his presence, but taken much of it from those closest to him. In a broader sense, Greene's story became emblematic of a generation of performers who carried public trust during uncertain times, people who became symbols of decency while quietly wrestling with doubt. His life asked a question that remains relevant. What happens when the world stops listening to the voice it once relied on? Even now, recordings of his wartime broadcasts, Bonanza episodes, and nature documentaries reveal a single through line. Not fame, not perfection, but steadiness. That steadiness had been his way of holding chaos at bay, both in the world and within himself. Lorne Greene never sought to be extraordinary. He sought only to be useful, to give meaning to words when meaning was hard to find. In that, he succeeded. His voice still carries, softened by time but unmistakable. And perhaps that is his final gift, a reminder that legacy is not built from how loudly we speak, but from how consistently we choose to keep speaking, even when the world grows quiet. Do we remember voices because of what they say, or because of what they make us feel when everything else is uncertain?